Hello again, Jimmy Smith, this time owning my picks for UFC 304. Belal Muhammad, of course, versus Leon Edwards main event. So, obviously some issues with this card, some really great performances and some kind of duds, right? Of course, if you listen to the post-fight comments of Dana White, he was a bit critical of the number of decisions. Talked about I'm lowering the bonus amount because it apparently doesn't do anything. A lot of the criticism has to be leveled on the fact that main event walked at 3 a.m. local time. Remember, they're on London time, but they want to have it air East Coast US, so they're 3 hours off. And so what is midnight here is 3 a.m. in London. Another thing to keep in mind, for people who've never run around a fight show or a fight card or anything like that, is all the press obligations, the weigh-ins, they're all on local time. So you're doing all the other stuff you have to do in regular time. You've got to get up in the morning, go to press, and do all these things, and the weigh-ins and all these things. The obligations around the fight are on local time. But the fight is 3 hours late because you want to be on East Coast USA time. So it's not as though they can do everything 3 hours late and adjust to the schedule. They can't. They have to be up for all the stuff they would normally do at, local time in Manchester. So it sucks. So I think that's part of the reason we got some flat performances is the idea they wanted to air East Coast U.S. time, but it was in Manchester. So everything was 3 hours off. So we did see some flat performances. I'll get into that in a second. But of course, Dana White, critical of the fact he had a lot of decisions. It was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in a row. Jesus. So a lot of decisions on the card. But start out with two of them. First off, Arnold Allen, Giga Chikadze. My pick was, for the money, Giga Chikadze. If you saw my breakdown, Giga Chikadze was like a 2-to-1 dog. I thought Arnold Allen is favored to win. I agree with that. I didn't think it should be as high as it was, 2-to-1. So I said, for the money, you got to go with Giga Chikadze. Now, Arnold Allen won, but it was a much closer fight than 2-to-1, right? The deal in this fight was Giga Chikadze, not a power striker necessarily. He didn't have the power to back off Arnold Allen. When someone's bringing physical pressure, you can either move and angle so much that you're not there, that sets up your offense, or you hit them hard enough to back them off, that they're not always walking forward on you. Make them pay for that physical pressure. And Giga Chikadze really didn't do either one. He wasn't getting mauled by any stretch of the imagination. He wasn't getting beat up or anything, but Arnold Allen kept coming forward and winging these big shots, and Giga Chikadze never made him pay enough to change the tenor of the fight. Meaning he was never able to hit hard enough that Arnold Allen went, all right, I can't keep chasing this guy. I got to do something else. Never did. So he was able to walk down Giga Chikadze the whole time. When Giga would land, it wasn't clean enough or strong enough to hurt Arnold Allen. And so Arnold Allen walked him down, landed some strikes, and got a unanimous decision victory in a fight that looked the same, basically, the last two rounds of the fight. I think Giga had a pretty good round one. After that, he just got walked down and beaten up. So it looked the same rounds 2 and 3. Wasn't a great start. You have a decision. It was kind of pedestrian after round number 2. So Arnold Allen, unanimous decision over Giga Chikadze. Gregory Rodriguez, Christian Leroy Duncan. I picked Gregory Rodriguez in this one. It looked kind of how I thought it would, except easier. I thought Gregory Rodriguez would just have a little more grit because he's a more experienced guy. Although he's physically powerful, but I thought when the going got tough, he would have a little more fuel because he was a UFC veteran who's been through some tough fights before. It was never tough for him. He was in on some easy takedowns, easily kind of, beasting Leroy Duncan. Getting in, body lock, lifting him up, dropping him, bloodied him up, good ground and pound. He was just physically dominant throughout. I thought he'd have to deal with some adversity from a new guy, young, trying to make his mark. He'd never been a defensive wizard, always been kind of an easy target. So I thought Duncan would land something at some point. Nope. Got physically dominated for 3 rounds. So my pick was correct, but I thought he'd have a little bit more of a challenge. It'd be a little bit more of a firefight. It wasn't a firefight at all. Rodriguez went in there, nickname's RoboCop. He looked like RoboCop. Big, strong, physical, and just manhandled Christian Leroy Duncan the whole time. So Gregory Rodriguez, unanimous decision win. Now getting into the meat of the card, Paddy Pimblett, Bobby Green. So I can't see a lot of fights live. I have a family. I can't stay up that late. I got to be up early in the morning a lot of time. So I can rarely see fights live. I usually have to catch up with them the next day, watch them on my iPad or whatever. And in this case, in the middle of the night, to me, the middle of the night, so during the card, I got a bunch of texts from people saying, man, is Paddy Pimblett for real? First thing I thought was, oh man, he must have dominated Bobby Green. For all these people that, oh man, Paddy Pimblet. So when I watched the fight this morning, I thought, okay, he must have been dominant. And I looked at the fight, and Bobby Green went in for a bad takedown and fell for a triangle and got choked out. That's the whole fight. Good for him, right? But I really thought or hoped, all right, if Paddy Pimblet's going to win this fight, that we see something more out of him and see what he's really made of. And that was in the lead up to the fight with Bobby Green's whole thing is I've been through wars and you haven't. I'm going to see what you've got in a long, difficult, grueling fight where I'm a power striker and I'm going to beat you up and we'll see what you have. There was none of that. The stand-up was real tentative. Neither guy really established themselves. Bobby Green never got his normal athletic, explosive, kind of unorthodox style. Never got it going. So the exchanges on feet were kind of tepid. And then he goes for this boneheaded takedown that wasn't set up well. He left his neck hanging out. And it was a guillotine transition to the triangle. I might do actually a technique breakdown video on that this week if I get time, because it's a move I like to do too. But my point is, any competent jiu-jitsu brown belt does exactly what Paddy Pimblet did in response to what Bobby Green did. He went for a bad takedown, left his neck hanging out. You go guillotine, transition to the triangle, and it's over with. So, great win for Paddy Pimblet. But he moves up into the ranked echelon of the UFC at 155 pounds. That's not easy. And he did it with a performance that was really defined by, I think, Bobby Green's really bad tactical mistake. It wasn't like this was a back-and-forth war or, man, he really dominated Bobby Green, and boy, this guy's really ready for top 15 guys. He called out Renato Moicano, which is a decent call-out. I think it's going to be a fun fight. But Bobby Green went right into Paddy Pimblet's wheelhouse. If I were training somebody to fight Paddy Pimblet, I would say, look, he's tricky on the ground. There are better guys on the ground at 155, for sure. But he's tricky, he's slick, he does some things that are a little unorthodox. If he gets an advantage on you, he's going to take it on the ground. Don't go to the ground with the guy unless you're sure. And that would be my number one advice, is striking's okay. You can beat that. His wrestling's not great, so it's not like you need to do a bunch of wrestling, but don't get caught in ground exchange with the guy. Don't get in a scramble battle with this guy. He's not Gilbert Burns. He's not Cron Gracie. He's not Damian Maia. Jacare, one of the UFC greats as far as submissions go. But he'll catch you if you're in transition. That's exactly what happened. Bobby Green went for a dumb takedown and ended up getting in a triangle. And then obviously armbar was after he was already out, which sucks. Hopefully his arm's okay. But he did the one thing he shouldn't have done. Paddy Pimblet took advantage and got the biggest win of his career against what was supposed to be the toughest opponent of his career. So he looked the best against the guy who was supposed to be the biggest challenge. So Paddy Pimblet able to win. Now they have to give him the ranked guys at 55. Now it really gets tough. Because even Renato Moicano, which is kind of a low-hanging fruit call-out, still a tough dude. That's still a hell of a fight. So Paddy Pimblet did well at home, got the triangle. I'm more disappointed in Bobby Green's tactical mistake in this fight than I'm impressed with Paddy Pimblet. But big step up for Paddy Pimblet. I thought Bobby Green was going to win that. Co-main event, Tom Aspinall, Curtis Blaydes. This is another one where I thought maybe we'd get a fight out of it. I'm big on Tom Aspinall. I think he's the greatest heavyweight of his era. I think he's number one in the world. I do think he beats John Jones, unless I see something radically different when John Jones takes on Stipe Miocic. I would right now favor Tom Aspinall. I'll do a separate video about whether or not they fight, actually. But Tom Aspinall looked great. Knocked down Curtis Blaydes, finished him in round number 1, 1 minute in. Dropped him, got his back, unloaded, and it was over. Curtis Blaydes said, and you saw he did catch Tom Aspinall, clipped him a little bit, went crazy. Aspinall, great footwork, good recovery, good movement, good accuracy, good power. Boom, it was over. Curtis Blaydes, critical of himself, said, I should have followed the game plan. And yes, he should have. He's not going to win a firefight with Tom Aspinall. I don't see anyone right now in the heavyweight division winning a firefight with Tom Aspinall. Nobody. I'm not saying the guy's unbeatable. I'm saying that's not how you're going to do it. Is, hey, let's trade punches or something. No. He's big. He's fast. His movement's good. His accuracy is good. His ability to read punches is very, very good. He fights like a 155-pounder, and he's a big heavyweight. So Tom Aspinall aced the exam, looked great. Only one fight that makes any sense for him is John Jones. Will we see that fight happen? I'll talk about it in a future video. But Tom Aspinall looked amazing at home. Great stuff. The moment didn't get to him, and the opponent didn't get to him. So, Of course, I picked Tom Aspen on the win, so 2-2 going into the main event. So, Belal Muhammad, Leon Edwards, as soon as the 2 takedowns happened in round number 1, I went, oh. This first one happened about 30 seconds in. And it was one of those deep ones, hands locked underneath the butt, lift. So easy, the easiest takedown you can get, which is double leg, hands under the butt, beast the guy up and drop him. And it happened. I have said many times on this channel, when someone is good at something, whatever it is, be it wrestling, kickboxing, whatever it is, and the first thing they do works, meaning you knew they were good at that thing, and the first thing they did, which is the easiest, simplest thing you can do, and it works, no problem, you have a long night. If you're taking on someone with really good hands and their first jab just snaps your head back and makes you a Pez dispenser, you've got a big problem. If the person's a leg kicker and their first leg kick just buckles your leg, why? You had a whole camp to get ready for that one thing. Now, a versatile striker, a great wrestler, is going to have that second and third option, right? They have a big toolkit. But stop the first one. Make that first takedown really difficult or cost them a lot of energy. And a great wrestler, we call it chain wrestling, right? You go in for a high crotch, it doesn't work, you go single leg, that doesn't work, you go double leg, you take the person down. That second or third one. In the NCAAs or the Olympic trials, Olympics are coming up, Olympic wrestling, the first takedown usually doesn't do it. These guys at the elite level, they either set it up so well that it works, meaning they have to hand fight forever and to get the takedown to work, or it is a second or third takedown. You don't see somebody dive for a single leg and it works and you take the guy down. It doesn't work at the elite level. So when I saw Belal Muhammad get the first takedown super easy, I went, oh, this is bad. Because Leon Edwards worked on takedown defense his whole camp. And it lasted 30 seconds. And Belal Muhammad is not a great wrestler. He doesn't have any NCAA titles. He didn't make any Olympic teams. He has a very good wrestling for MMA. He has a more grinding style. He sets it up a little bit with his jab, gets in there, clinches you, and then drops and takes you down. It isn't beautiful, but it's effective. And Leon Edwards never made him work hard enough that you're going to get Belal Muhammad, who's a cardio freak, tired. You're never going to wear him down. He'll do that forever. That first round, he can do that for 10 rounds in a row. And as soon as I saw that first round, I was like, he's done. He's not going to win this. He's not going to win it. He's not going to. And when he was able to break free, I think it was round number 1, once again, Leon puts him in his defenses like pummeling with him, like grappling with him. And I was like, what the hell are you doing? Belal Muhammad can grapple forever. And one of the major things you learn in MMA, and once you do MMA and once you teach MMA, is someone who's good at something, who's been doing wrestling their whole life, you can wake them up out of a coma and put them in a tournament, and they'll at least do okay on instinct, right? Their muscle memory is just so, like, Bo Nickel right now could wrestle in a major tournament, and, he's not wrestling that often right now, but muscle memory, he'd be in it really quickly. Damian Maia could right now compete at Worlds and at least look good because of muscle memory. They've just been doing it so long that it doesn't make them tired, and they know how to do it efficiently. That's wrestling in Belal Muhammad, and Leon kept grappling with him. Even the rounds he won, he took Belal's back. I was like, why are you grappling with this guy? You're not going to submit him. And he's going to be able to just get out of a lot of positions, and he's going to be a step ahead of you every single time. It was like Leon was afraid to kind of break off and do his thing and strike. And he never got his striking going. He never got his range going, which I thought he would do when I picked him to win this fight. I thought he'd be able to keep this one at a distance, and he just looked flat. He looked flat. We can talk about the 3-hour time difference. Once again, as I said, the main event walked at 3 a.m. local time. But one of the things I say all the time about MMA is the most underrated asset is consistency. You can't ever be flat. Think about in your job, whatever you do for a living as you're watching this. You go into work and you just don't feel like being there, which we all do. No matter what our job is, some days we just don't want to be there. You can't ever do that in MMA, in combat sports. You can't ever go, this is an off day for me. What am I going to do? You're going to lose. And you're going to get beat up. You're going to get hurt and you lose your title. And all of those things happened. Leon Edwards had a flat performance against a guy who was really prepared, who was always physically ready to go, and it cost him. I really thought Leon Edwards did not look good. So he loses a unanimous decision, and I thought he lost 4 out of 5 rounds. I thought his strategy was awful, and he just seemed to be a step behind the entire fight. a lot of people now are saying who's going to pay money to watch Belal Muhammad fight. He does tend to win by decision. I understand. I love Belal Muhammad. I do understand those criticisms. He's not a finisher. He's literally never knocked anyone down. Somebody put that stat out there somewhere. Please correct me if that's wrong, but I don't recall. He stopped Sean Brady. Sean Brady was on his feet. It was a TKO. He was standing up. He's just not that guy. He's just a grinder. So the problem is, as I had said on previous videos, I was talking about Dustin Poirier, where Dustin Poirier is the blue-collar, hard-working guy who's good at everything, but doesn't have any physical attribute that is over the top, right? He doesn't have Colby Covington cardio. He doesn't have the gigantic size of like a Yoel Romero or the explosiveness of the wrestling of a Ben Askren. Something that puts him, okay, you have all this stuff, but this thing really makes you great. Dustin Poirier doesn't have one of those. And what I said when I was talking about Dustin is I said, usually those guys don't win titles. And when they do win titles, they don't have long runs. Well, Belal Muhammad just won the title. But once again, guys like that usually run into somebody who has some physical attribute that's a little too much, who's a little too fast, who's a little too strong, a little too explosive. Their wrestling's like top shelf Olympic stuff. So can Belal do it? Maybe. He's not gonna have a long run. He's also, he got the title much later in life. This is a little bit of a side note here, but a few months ago, I did a GOAT thing for ESPN. We were talking about, the greatest champions of all time in various weight classes. And I got asked a question by my broadcast partner, Phil Murphy from ESPN. He said, how come all these champions are in the same era? GSP, John Jones, Anderson Silva, Jose Aldo. Well, why were they all fighting at the same time? And they're all like, what about that era made them so great? And one of the things I said is, in that era, you got title shots much earlier in your career. GSP's first title shot was in, I think, his third UFC fight, fought Matt Hughes. Anderson Silva got one in his second UFC fight. You didn't have to fight that long in the UFC before you got a title shot. And so these guys won their titles, and I know Jose Aldo, of course, was grandfathered in. He was a WEC champion when he came in, 145. But it's the idea that you won the title in your mid-20s. So, yeah, you go on a 4 or 5 year run, you're right in your physical prime. Now, in MMA, you got to go on an unbelievable streak. For Belal Muhammad, it was 10. He's 36 years old. The idea that he goes on a 3 or 4 year run, he's almost 40, is unlikely. It's just, guys win titles much later in their careers now. So you just don't see those incredible. John Jones, of course, the youngest UFC champion of all time. So yeah, he went on a great run. He's had a lot more years. So that's another thing, is Belal's not only he's not finishing guys. So he's having to go a lot of rounds every single time. And he won the title late. So I'm really interested to see what he can do with this run and how far he can go. So it's going to be interesting, and I'll definitely talk about that later. But as far as UFC 304 goes, that's it. Have a good one. Bye.